Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan with the National Weather Service, and we're glad you're joining us here to get the latest weather across the state. And if you have a desire to obtain more information, you go online at weather.gov/Alaska or call for a recorded phone line forecast at 1-800-472-0391. Well, the only hazard we have currently in effect in terms of warnings is a red flag warning for along the Alaska Range northward through Delta Junction and Fairbanks areas. There have been southeasterly winds of 15 to 25 miles an hour and gusting 30 to upwards to 40 miles an hour. And that red flag warning is in effect until 9 p.m. this Thursday evening. Fire danger remains very high across that area, also other parts of the state, but nevertheless that red flag warning in effect this Thursday evening until 9 p.m. And here's a quick check of the fire danger situation across the state. You do see areas of high to extremely high fire danger, especially along and north of the Alaska Range, as well as there along the Yukon River in the east and northeast central areas, especially the Yukon Flats. And then there are other pockets of high fire danger, including the Copper River Basin, south of the Alaska Range, and on over toward areas around Bethel and Aniak, on up toward parts of the northwest coast there at Point Hope. So just keep in mind, if you're going to be out anywhere, especially in the wilderness, handle fire with care this time of year. Well, there are a couple big weather stories, features that are really influencing the weather here across the state. The most notable is low pressure that's located along the eastern area of the Aleutians and the southwest tip of the Alaska Peninsula. This feature is slow moving. It's just been spinning. It's sending a lot of moisture northward. You can see a southerly stream of moisture coming up across the Gulf of Alaska. That's keeping the rains going across the southeast panhandle and into areas of the south central coast there, especially Kenai down toward Kodiak Island, where you have that southeasterly flow coming up into the coastal mountains, producing some heavier rainfall. And that moisture does extend northward all the way up into the Yukon River. And as we put the satellite into motion, you can see the spin there with the circulation centered there near Unalaska. But the other big feature is an upper level high pressure system, a ridge of high pressure that's going to be flexing its muscle northwestward up along the British Columbia coast into the southeast panhandle. That's going to allow for some drier weather and much warmer temperatures there in the southeast. In fact, parts of the Pacific Northwest, particularly the lower 48, Washington State, Oregon, Idaho, they're going to see record high temperatures coming up here this weekend into next week that will exceed 100 degrees. In fact, Portland, Oregon is in jeopardy of seeing their all-time record high of 107 degrees be reached or exceeded. And there are some other areas there in the interior Northwest that could see high temperatures up around or just above 110 degrees. That's remarkable. Well, here, nothing that hot, but nevertheless, some people like to see the cloudy skies and rain go away. But with this kind of pattern, when we have a ridge over the Pacific Northwest, particularly the lower 48, that tends to keep an area of low pressure over western Alaska, which is the case, and that's going to keep the cloud cover and occasional showers going, especially across the southwestern third of the state here through a good part of the weekend. Though I think south central areas should start to dry out as we get into Sunday, along with maybe a little warmer temperatures. But nevertheless, you can see that flow of moisture coming up there from the south there right up into the Gulf of Alaska, keeping especially the coastal areas, the coastal mountains, going with the rain. Well, here is the weather map, and there's that particular low pressure now there right between the eastern Aleutians and the tip of the Alaska Peninsula. That feature is only going to slowly drift off to the northeast here and weaken as we head through the weekend. Meanwhile, low pressure remains up along the Brooks Range, where there are scattered showers and a few thunderstorms. In fact, some of the downpour is pretty good. Locally, some showers and isolated thunderstorms could produce upwards to an inch of rain in the central and western Brooks Range. There is a cold front along the Arctic coast. It's not going to make a lot of progress southward. The colder air is going to tend to move eastward along the coastline and not penetrate inland much, other than maybe a bit of the north slope. And then there's a hint of that high. You can see the ridge of high pressure nudging up into the southern Panhandle. And that high right now, though, with that strong southerly flow off the Gulf, it's just keeping lower cloudiness and rain going along the southeast Panhandle. But in time, that high is going to retrograde. That ridge will retrograde a little more westward and flux its muscle, and that'll allow portions of the southeast Panhandle to dry out and perhaps get temperatures in the 70s, even some 80s by Sunday, especially down there toward Ketchikan. So keep that in mind. But for tonight, there's that low sitting there off the tip of the southwest peninsula, and it's going to only slowly drift northward into the southeast bearing. And with it, just periods of, at times, even some moderate rain along the coastal areas there of the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island. Meanwhile, cold front up along the Arctic coast kind of scoots more off toward the east. Friday, we'll still see some scattered showers, perhaps some scattered thunderstorms redeveloping portions up there toward Yukon Flats and then down toward Northway along the Elkan border, and perhaps even an isolated storm in the southwest. Saturday, at least the moisture flow will begin to slow down and shut off there across the northern Gulf and the Pacific side there of the Alaska Peninsula as that high pressure begins to nudge itself over a little bit to the west. And here are low temperatures generally in the lower mid-50s, the southeast Panhandle, and mid-40s to around 50 across south central areas. Highs Friday will generally be in the 60s. Though it could be as warm as 68 there at Ketchikan and 66 there southeast interior at Glen Allen, otherwise struggling to get to about 62 at Anchorage and 50s along the coast. And for Saturday morning, lows will generally be in the 50s across the Panhandle, but mid-40s to around 50 degrees for much of the south central areas, with highs generally in the mid-50s to lower 60s across south central areas. But see that hint of warmer temperatures there, 78 on Saturday in Ketchikan, on their way to 80 plus come Sunday. Friday morning along the coast, Arctic coast will see lows just above freezing in many spots. Otherwise, upper 40s, lower 50s, the Yukon Valley. Highs will be in the 70s, Fairbanks, Fort Yukon, 76, 77 at Eagle Village, but along the Arctic coast, generally upper 30s to around 40. And as we get into Saturday morning, lows will generally be in the low mid-30s along the Arctic coast, around 50 the Yukon Valley, 40 there out across the Seward Peninsula. High temperatures Saturday should get up into the 40s to near 50 along the Arctic coast as well as the Seward Peninsula, but 60s and 70s through the Yukon Valley. And across the southwest, we are looking for highs or morning lows Friday morning, generally in the 40s, and that extends out through the Aleutian chain, with high temperatures up along portions of the Yukon and Kuskokwim river basins getting back up above 60. Elsewhere, though, going down along the Alaska Peninsula, mid 50s, and then upper 40s to around 50 across the Aleutian chain. Saturday morning, lows again generally mid to upper 40s across much of the southwest and Alaska Peninsula, lower 40s the Aleutian chain, and then high temperatures Saturday afternoon under cloud cover and some scattered showers, upper 50s to maybe lower 60s at best across the interior southwest, and then generally in the low and mid 50s across the Alaska Peninsula, and upper 40s to around 50 extending out through the Aleutians. So here's the temperature outlook, 6 to 10 day temperature outlook for June 30th through July 4th. And check this out. Looking for temperatures to average a bit below normal, especially up through or in around Cook Inlet, including the Anchorage area, Kenai, Kodiak Island. But notice the southeast, especially the southern half of the southeast Panhandle, which would include Sitka and Ketchikan, looking at above normal temperatures. And if you glance off toward the lower right of your screen, you'll see kind of a brick red over the Pacific Northwest of the continental U.S. Record heat could continue into early July across that area, which will really enhance the fire danger. Precipitation-wise, southeast Alaska and far east central areas should see below normal precipitation, whereas the southwest will tend to see above normal precipitation, and that trend will continue with this upper level pattern that kind of remains locked in place.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Well, the weekend is almost here, and it is time for your aviation weather for planning purposes. Friday into Saturday, we'll see IFR conditions along the Arctic coast, portions of the northern Gulf, back along the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, and then out over the Bering Sea. And we have a couple of weather systems. There's an area of low pressure that's sitting over the southeast Bering there, kind of nestled off of Bristol Bay. And that'll keep some IFR conditions going down across southwest parts of the state. Still IFR conditions expected for Friday afternoon along the Arctic coast and over the northern Gulf, including Prince William Sound. Isolated thunderstorms possible there just north of the Yukon Flats and along the Alcan in east central or southeast central parts of the state along the Canadian border. And for Saturday morning, we'll see still IFR conditions out over the northern Gulf, Prince William Sound, across portions of the southwest back into the Bering and off the Arctic coast. And then as we head through Saturday afternoon, we'll see a potential for some scattered showers, isolated storms redeveloping along the Yukon River Valley, and still some pockets of IFR along the south central coast there, the northern Gulf, and the southwest, especially there, the Yukon, Kuskokwim deltas, and along Bristol Bay. Well, past conditions for Friday, Anaktuvik will be MVFR, and that'll be the case at again. And then as we drop southwestward, Lake Clark and Merrill will see IFR conditions in the morning, trying to improve to MVFR by afternoon. And then Rainy Pass will see IFR becoming MVFR as well. And as we round out the Alaska Range, IFR conditions start there at windy, but should become VFR by afternoon. And Isabel will see MVFR conditions becoming VFR. Mentasta should be able to hold on to VFR conditions throughout the day on Friday. And then Tanita, MVFR, coming up to VFR. And Portage will see IFR conditions holding along the east entrance and out over Prince William Sound. The west end, though, MVFR will be the case throughout the day Friday. And for Chilkoot and White, IFR conditions in the morning improving, though later morning and for afternoon becoming MVFR. Freezing levels will generally be below 6,000 feet over the southwest and through the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, and the Kenai. Colder air is lurking up there, northern end of the Chukchi Sea. Front there isn't going to make much headway south. We have a humongous area of high pressure located over British Columbia and the lower 48 Pacific Northwest. Look at those freezing levels above 14 and 16,000 feet there from areas around Ketchikan, Sitka southward. And we do expect that high is going to have an influence on the weather there as it holds here in the next few days, at least through the weekend into parts of early next week. Icing potential will be best between 7 and 13,000 feet over the southwest into the Alaska Peninsula in association with that low pressure and the moisture associated with it. It's kind of spinning slowly around there because that feature is nearly stationary. And then above 11,000 feet along the middle Yukon Valley on up to the south slopes of the Brooks Range in response to some scattered convection. There could be some isolated storms firing up in those areas. And then the jet stream level winds way up at 30,000 feet. Look at this massive high pressure. It extends all the way up into the atmosphere to 30,000 feet over British Columbia, centered over Vancouver Island. Strong southwesterly upper level jet core of 130 to 140 knots coming ashore there around Yakutat and out over the northern Gulf. Mainland of Alaska, southern area, southwest winds 60 knots. Backside of that low Bristol Bay out of the north-northwest, upwards of 60 and 75 knots, dropping down to 9,000 feet. You see that high still showing up in the mid-levels of the atmosphere there over British Columbia along the coast there. And then southwest winds of 45 to 55 knots coming in, especially up the northern half of the southeast peninsula. And then back through west side of the state, winds from the south ahead of that low pressure there out over the eastern Bering from the south at 35 to 50 knots, and then dropping down to 3,000 feet. We can see still that high circulation out over the North Pacific, well offshore of British Columbia, and the low that remains just north of the Alaska Peninsula in the East Bering with southeast to south winds of 35 to near 50 knots over the southwest part of the state. And turbulence will be surface to 3,000 central Aleutians, surface to 4,000 much of the southwest, and surface to 10,000 along the Alaska Range. If you're heading out, have a safe flight.
Hi there, star followers. Stargazing is a fantastic summer activity, but there are so many stars, sometimes it helps to have a mnemonic, a memory trick, to find things to gaze at. Astronomers use Follow the Arc to Arcturus and Speed On to Spica, so let's give it a try. Hit the darkness at 10 p.m. and find the Big Dipper asterism in the northwestern sky. Now draw an imaginary arc through the handle of the Dipper and you'll find the bright orange star of Arcturus. Then just keep going and straighten out that arc and you'll find the bright blue star of Spica. Red giant Arcturus is the closest giant star to Earth and the fourth brightest in the sky, while Spica in Virgo is a bright binary star. It's actually featured on the Brazilian flag. Thanks to this mnemonic, you can find 2 more stars in the sky. Continue olhando para o céu.
Ever been to the beach and noticed litter like plastic bottles or foam takeout containers on the sand? Or maybe you've been to a river or bay where there's a bag or a car tire stuck in the mud on the shore, or a bunch of deflated balloons that say happy birthday floating in the water? All of that junk in the water or on the shoreline is considered marine debris. It's anything solid and man-made in the ocean or Great Lakes that is not supposed to be there. And anything people use every day can become marine debris if they don't dispose of it properly. And I mean anything. The most common items we find when we do shoreline cleanups are plastics. But we also find rubber, cloth, glass, metal, and paper litter. Sometimes the debris is so tiny, like a plastic microbead from your face wash, that you can barely see it in the water. Marine debris is more than just trash in the ocean. Sometimes fishers lose their gear like fishing traps, nets, or fishing line, and it continues to drift through the water, catching animals for a long time. We call that derelict fishing gear, and it's marine debris. Have you ever seen an old boat left behind on a shoreline? Abandoned and derelict vessels are also marine debris. So let's review. Anything we use every day can become marine debris if we don't dispose of it properly or if it goes into the water by accident. Marine debris can be very small or can be very big, and anything in between. But most importantly, marine debris is one of the biggest pollution problems facing the world's oceans and waterways today.
How does marine debris impact the ocean, animals, and me? Would you want to swim in a beach littered with trash? Of course not. And the animals who live in the ocean don't either. The difference is, they don't have a choice. Marine species often get tangled in debris, from fishing nets to six-pack rings. If they get caught, they could get injured or even die. And even if they don't get entangled, many animals mistake plastic debris for food and eat it. This fills their stomach with junk they can't digest. Debris can also damage important habitats, like coral reefs, by breaking or smothering them. Corals serve as the base of the marine ecosystem, and impacts here can be felt all the way to you and me. Plus, plastics have harmful chemicals in them. Fish eat plastic, we eat fish. The question is, can those chemicals harm us? Marine debris also hurts the economy. It costs a lot of money to clean up, and people don't want to go to dirty beaches. Boats and ships could run into large pieces of debris too, or get their propellers tangled. We need the ocean and everything in it, and the ocean needs us to keep it free of debris. What can we do about marine debris?
A lot of the trash that's in our ocean is plastic.
And that marine debris is hurting our environment, economy, and health.
the problem will only get worse.
unless we change the way we consume and dispose of products. There are solutions,
And together, we can prevent litter from ending up in the ocean. Some people might say,
well, I'm just one person, so I can't make a difference.
but that's just not true.
If each person who creates trash, and that's just about everyone, took action, it would add up to a whole lot of change.
So what can we do?
Well, the ultimate solution is prevention, and we need to keep that as our highest priority.
We can reduce, reuse, and recycle to keep debris out of the ocean in the first place.
You can bring your own shopping bag, drink out of a reusable bottle, and participate in things like a shoreline cleanup.
Join a group cleaning up the beach or grab some friends and clean up your street. It's easy.
Be more conscious of how many disposable plastic items you're using. And if you do,
Where are you putting it? In the trash can? Whoops. Or in the recycling bin?
so here's the challenge. The next time you finish using a throwaway item, a bag, a bottle, or utensil, answer the question, where is this going? Because ultimately, when you throw stuff away, there really is no away. It has to go somewhere.
So keep asking yourself this important question.
How will you keep your trash from becoming marine debris?
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
We're going to start our marine segment with the sea ice edge, and we continue to see the ice just breaking up across the Chukchi Sea and up into portions of the Arctic coastline. Essentially, the Bering is ice-free there, just a few little patches here or there around St. Lawrence Island and especially the Russian side of the Bering Strait. Otherwise, much of the southern Chukchi Sea is opened up with some ice still there around Kotzebue Sound out up toward Point Hope, and then areas along the Arctic coast will continue to see the ice break up as we are now in the midst of summer. And taking a look at Friday's marine forecast, well, we are looking at the inner waterways having winds generally around 15 knots, so some higher gusts around Petersburg, with waves of 3 to 5 feet. Along the coast of the Gulf there, we are looking for winds upwards to 25 knots from the southeast, swells anywhere from 8 to 10 feet. And on Saturday, winds will be somewhat variable across the inner waterways. Northwesterly 20 knots Ketchikan, but northerly at Petersburg and southerly at Juneau, Skagway from the south there. And waves generally a few feet there in the inner waterways. South end of the southeast panhandle, we're looking at northwest winds 15 to 20 knots, swells 7 to 8 feet. And southeasterly east winds at 20 knots from Gustavus to Yakutat westward with swells of 9 to 10 feet. South central areas will see winds generally from the southeast off of the Gulf, so onshore flow there at the Kenai, 15 to 20 knots, swells 8 to 9 feet there, especially the mouth of Cook Inlet where southeasterly winds could approach 30 knots. And Prince William Sound, 15 knot winds from the southeast and 3-foot waves. Westerly winds up toward Anchorage at the end of the Kenai, up north of the Kenai there, with a couple of foot waves. Lighter winds Saturday, southeasterly 10 knots, 2-footers there, Prince William Sound. East-southeast winds 10 to 20 knots off the Kenai, 6-foot swells, and maybe 25 knot winds there at the mouth of Cook Inlet, little channeling taking place there. The Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island. On Friday, we'll see an area of low pressure there just north of Cold Bay, and ahead of it, south winds of 25 to 30 knots, creating swells of 10 to 13 feet. On the Bering side, 3 to 5 foot waves with southeasterly winds 15 to 25 knots. For Saturday, winds do come down a bit. Southerly winds on the Pacific and the Gulf side at 15 to 20 knots, swells 7 to 8 feet, though 4-footers there, little shelter at Shelikof Strait. And then southeast to south winds 20 to 25 knots, 4 to 5 foot waves on the Bering side. Across the Aleutians on Friday, winds will generally be out of the west, lighter 10 to 15 knots around Dutch Harbor, but 20 to 25 knots westward, especially west of Nikolsky all the way out to Adak and Kiska. with swells of 7 to 8 feet on the Pacific side and anywhere from 5 to as much as 9 feet on the Bering side. On Saturday, winds will be out of the west, southwest there in the eastern Aleutians, 15 to 20 knots, swells generally 6 to 8 feet, and more southerly, 20 to 25 knots ahead of the next low pressure system that'll still be well southwest of the western Aleutians. The west coast will see offshore flow from the east, but areas out over open waters will be somewhat variable, 10 to 15 knots, swells 3 to 5 feet. Saturday, a little lighter wind, still offshore flow out of Norton Sound and off the west coast at 10 to 20 knots, and waves generally 4 to 5 feet. Along the Arctic coast, we are going to see northerly winds. There is a cold front that's going to just brush the Arctic coast overnight and on Friday, turning those winds northerly to 20 knots. And then down along the northwest coast, winds will be out of the north-northwest at 25 knots with waves of 5 to 8 feet. And then for Saturday, winds will turn back toward the east-southeast at 15 knots along the Arctic coast, with areas of ice still in place, but where there is open water, the lower Chukchi Sea could see winds out of the with a southerly component at 10 to 15 knots and waves a few feet. There's that low pressure system located at the tip of the Alaska Peninsula that's going to drift northward and gradually weaken on Friday, so at least the winds won't be as strong. Still coastal areas of rain, though, along the Kenai down through Kodiak Island, and that low will continue to slowly weaken as we head into Saturday, with a little lighter winds then along the Alaska Peninsula. Thank you for watching our show, and be sure to join us again tomorrow night.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.